Johnno, we want your All-Australian locks. You tell us there is 16.
There is.
Let's go through them.
All right. So, Sammy Taylor from GWS.
A lock.
A lock. He is locked.
Is he locked?
He's locked.
How many games has he played?
He is
Floored me with
locked.
the first nominee as your
He's
lock.
locked. Well, you replace him then, please.
He's a lock.
He's locked. James Sicily.
Hang on a
from
sec.
Hawthorn.
He's only played 12 games.
That's okay. He's locked and loaded.
12 games.
Yes.
He'd be the
And he had a
first
poor game last week.
He's locked.
All-Australian to be
In
locked
my
in.
All-Australian team, he is locked. Locked.
Okay.
James Sicily. Dan Houston is a lock. Darcy Moore's a lock. And Sinclair is a lock. Dacos Josh is a lock. So is Nick.
Where's Josh?
Josh is on a wing as a lock.
Okay,
Where's
we've got a breakthrough with a
Yep.
wingman.
Butters is a lock. Errol Goulden's a lock.
Yeah, I think that's
Big
fair.
lock.
A double lock.
A double lock. Petrarca's a lock. Walker's a lock. Rosie, Toby Green, Charlie Curnow. They're the forward locks. And then you got Bont, and I mentioned Nick Dacos, and I think Jordan Dawson is a lock as well from the Adelaide Crows. So there's my 16. So I've got three
Okay.
bench spots. The ruck is not a lock yet. The back pocket is not a lock yet, and a forward pocket is not a lock yet. They're the positions that I've got.
And then
Three.
there's the bench.
And the bench, there's 3 spots on the bench. Yep. that
So
aren't
who
a
have you
lock
got
yet.
on the bench?
At the moment, I've got Zach Merritt, who I nearly circled, who I think's had an unbelievable year, Zach Merritt. I think he's been absolutely sensational. I've got Libba and Lockie Neal on the bench at the moment. My back pocket was Tommy Stewart at the moment. My forward pocket was Luke Bruce, which is the forward pocket, Kane,
Really
is the
hard.
toughest selection out of all the positions, because you either go for a genuine small who they've fluctuated all year. You go for a Luke Bruce, who's from round 7 has been absolutely unbelievable. So that becomes, so you go for a hybrid, or you throw maybe a ruckman down there.
Or you
and-
go
and-
for a player who's kicked 6 goals and Brian Myers, which would be unheard
Well,
of
yeah,
as well.
exactly. And I had Myers written down because his goal assists are off the charts, yet his own scoring isn't. So where's that combination like? Because Petrarca, I think, second in goal assists, but also kicked plenty himself. So that's maybe the right balance that you see in an All-Australian team from an individual who sits in the forward line. So, and Timmy English, Maxi Gawn's on a flyer. So Timmy English was okay last week. He got back to some reasonable form, but he needs to finish strong in the next few weeks. He's got some games, Timmy English, that he should dominate. He should dominate this week, and he should dominate against the West Coast Eagles. Although Baby
Who's the
Williams has
third
come
best
up.
ruckman in the game at the present time, do you reckon? I think it's Sean Darcy when he's playing, but he's not playing. Luke Jackson had a couple of blinders.
Draper from Essendon's the same boat, isn't
Same
he?
boat.
Same boat.
Oscar, the big O.
Big O's a good, yeah, he's a really strong,
big
really
Briggsy.
strong player.
Kieran
Briggsy,
Kieran
yeah,
Briggsy,
Briggsy's
yeah.
been good, hasn't he?
Briggsy's there.
From GWS. So there's my 16
All right,
locks.
well,
so
thank
So
you.
probably about 14 of those you agreed with, and there's a couple you don't.
No, I just don't want to say too much. Taylor floored me. I mean, Sicily, I wouldn't have him as a lock, but yeah, clearly in the discussion. So I think the small forward and the key defensive spot is really difficult. I think the ruck's hard, and then the midfield's always hard. Like you've left some big names out through the midfield, which is always going to happen through the midfield because there's so many players, particularly if you pick a wing and Dacos is playing as one of your midfielders. And you could argue Sinclair is a midfielder as well, not a halfback flanker, which makes things even more difficult. But have your say on that. There's Johnno's 16 locks. We, of course, will post that to our social media accounts, and you can give your friendly thoughts. I'm sure they'll all be positive. Or, even better, you can give us a call, 1300 736 736, the Harcourt's open line.
What about Joe Danaher?
I had Joe in there for many weeks.
16 weeks.
Yeah, for many weeks.
So how come he's not a lock?
Because
One bloke's in there, he's played 12 games.
in the forward half of the ground, I've gone Walker Curnow, and then I had to, as Kane will find very shortly.
Yes.
I put Petrarca and Rosie on the flanks with Toby Green. So therefore, Joe Danaher unfortunately just doesn't have that role in my my All-Australian team, and that's where it becomes tough now. Like these next few weeks, and you'll have Carlton fans asking where Wiedering could be, or
Newman.
yeah, players like that. I don't think Newman's All-Australian, but Wiedering, yes, is absolutely on the list. But I've gone with the other guys in front of him, and that's just my personal decision on how I've seen the influence they've had.
I think if Wiedering was to nail it, he needs to play like he has for the last 6 weeks for the most of the season. And even by his own admission, he was a puncher. Now he's an interceptor. which adds enormous quality to his impact.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Johnno, let's move on to... You were one of the only few that had doubts on the Pies, I reckon, coming into the season. I don't think many of us thought they'd finish on top, but we thought we'd be in the mix, and you had your doubts. I wonder whether you're feeling a little bit justified now and how you see their challenges recently.
Feeling justified because they've lost a couple in a row. Is that what you...
Well,
not really. No, I got that.
Team.
No, I got that wrong in terms of, I thought with the top 6 draw, I was more, I said at the start of the year, though, I was just a watch on them because they did so well last year. Now they get a tougher draw how they were going to perform, and they've blown it away, the Pies, throughout the entire season. To
defend you a little bit as well, you also said that teams are going to come after them and hunt them and work out, as is what happens to good teams. And feels like there's a bit of that. Like everyone gets themselves up to play the Pies. Like it's an unfortunate situation that you're in. Everyone wants to knock them off. And that was the other watch I think you had on them. So what do they do from here? How concerned should they be?
Well, it's just more. You're right about that because Hawthorn did say after the game that they said that was their grand final, playing the best team in the comp on the MCG. We're treating this like a GF, and they played that way. And maybe that's what caught Collingwood off guard a little bit. So we see if Collingwood can reset themselves. Gerard, it becomes a Friday night frenzy.
A frenzy.
I think it becomes the last 3 Friday nights for the Pies. They play the Cats, the Lions, and the Bombers. So we'll start with the negative.
Right.
Okay. So they've already lost 2. If they lose this Friday night,
yes,
the anxiety, I think, just starts to set in a little bit.
Yeah. This is for the crowd
This is for the fans.
Oh, the fans.
This is for the fans. Now,
the frenzy.
The frenzy.
So lose one, you've got a very anxious crowd.
I think so. Just 3 in a row. Questions start to be asked. Yeah. Where do we actually sit? Lose 2.
Yes.
I think there's some total shock.
That
just starts to set in. I think there'll be some straight eyes looking, not moving, just like, really?
Yeah.
Is this happening? Lose 3. Comatose. This is that's a disaster leading into
They're walking
finals.
out of the MCG. They're not even walking.
No, zombie-like.
Oh, zombie.
I don't know what's going on.
This is a very important 3 weeks for the Pies.
But the positive.
Okay,
let's finish with the positive. If they win this week, okay, the struts just comes back a little bit, doesn't it?
A little bit of confidence is back.
A bit of confidence is back.
The doubts are gone.
We've got the win we needed to, and here we go, without Dacos in the team. Then if they win 2, the extreme state of excitement just starts to really build back up.
Here we go.
Here we come.
Yep.
Here we come. The Pies are set for a spell before a big final. And then win 3 in a row. It's just a full-on frenzy.
It is. It's back.
Try and control the Pies fans if they win the 3 Friday nights in a row, leading into a huge final series, which they'll want on a Friday night as well, because they are going to dominate the next. I think they'll dominate the next 3 weeks. As tough as it's going to be.
So we've got the comparison, Kane. We've got full comatose. We've got full-on frenzy.
Yeah, that'll be the strut. I think I'm with you. It's an excellent game for them to get against Geelong at the MCG. I think it's a good test for them. Cat's not going great. There'll be some.
I think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's
the fact that they're big, as they are, big games, big Friday nights. This is going to be fun to watch.
Good on you, John. I love that. Is Errol Goulden's goal of the year? I certainly changed my mind on this.
Cracking goal.
I know I don't change my mind very often.
You've changed that it's not goal of the year.
No, I had Houston as goal of the year.
I know you did.
I said it wouldn't be beaten. I've changed it to Goulden.
I watched you on the weekend, Kane, and
I've changed it.
You actually, I can't believe you said this was goal of the year. Seriously.
You don't rate it.
No, I rate it. It's a very good goal.
Which goal is better?
Will Ashcroft's goal is goal of the year. No. I want you to YouTube it and watch it in the break, because you watch how he comes through the contest, taps to himself, grabs and kicks in midair. This goal is not, it's freakish, but it's deliberate as well. You've got Errol Goulden now. I know you loved his run, right? But I remember watching you one day run from half back to half forward, pick the ball up, do a double handball and kick a goal, mate. It's not that hard to do.
Pick it up with one hand, run past 6 players, pick it up with one hand, handball it off, get it back, and then slot one with the check side from the boundary line, running at full speed after you've already ran 150 metres, Johnno.
Come on. I remember Gerard calling me going through the chicane once, and and that didn't even get a look in for goal of the year.
Okay, Johnno, you've distracted a lot. You've put up a lot of distractions, but we're going back to the calls. And on the road, a comment on Johnno's locks. Welcome to you, whoever you may be.
Yeah, g'day, boys. And I think Johnno could be the second former Bulldog to be told he's not required next year. Now, Johnno, Max Gawn is a lock because the only reason Melbourne have turned their form around is simply because of what service he gives their midfield, and that's why Petrarca's a lock. But you've left out Jacob Wiedering having a stellar year. How he can be overlooked? I'm starting to wonder about you, Johnno. I had a bit of faith in you, but
we just had a discussion. We had a discussion about Wiedering. So with Max Gawn, can I ask you this? Do you keep Tim English in the team, or is it Gawn? That's it.
I think it's Gawn. You look at the service; he's turned around, and since Grundy's gone out, Melbourne have just gone to another level with the service that he gives the midfield.
But this is the issue that all Australian selectors and pundits have to face, and that is recency bias. Yep. So at the start of the year, Max was going forward. He wasn't playing anywhere near the amount of time in the ruck as he was now, and clearly he's been the best ruckman in the game for the last 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, where he's been amazing. But this is a 24-week campaign, so that's why it's so difficult to do it justice. You have to follow it week in, week out, and and absolutely forcibly tell yourself, beware recency bias. And I'm not saying Max doesn't get in, because if Max gets in, English is gone. But it's not as simple as what he's done the last 6 weeks.
No, and I think the same applies to Wiedering as well. So I think there's a lot of Carlton fans really passionate about Jacob Wiedering, and I get it. Like, his last 6 or 7 has been excellent, but you got to look at the first 6 or 7. And just to give you an example of how we do that, so you don't just focus on the recency bias, you meet at about round 11, Gerard, and you do put up the team as it is right now, so that when you come back in 10, 11 weeks' time, you don't get distracted by what's gone on just recently in the last 4 or 5 weeks. You go, hang on. At round 11, you had this guy as a certainty with the form that he's had. Why have you changed it? So you challenge each other on that, and you do make sure that you don't just focus on the recent events, and you look at what's happened in the first portion of the season as well. But John, appreciate your comments. Rich is on the line as well, and he's got a question about an Essendon player who's kicked a lot of goals. Welcome to Sports Day, Rich.
Thanks, Kane. He's kicked a lot of goals, but it'd be worth going back through his heat maps from round 1 to about round 10. He plugged a lot of holes down back. Laverde went down on Anzac Day. He had to go back for a quarter and a half. He's done that a number of times.
So we're talking about Kyle Langford.
Yep. Kyle Langford, mate.
He's been awesome. He really has.
It's a very good
I agree
call.
with that, Rich.
Yeah, it's a good nomination.
His last 2 weeks in particular, I edged towards Luke Bruce this week, but there's no that could change. That spot is the one that could be Bruce, Langford. That's probably the main.
What about
two
Charlie
guys,
kicked
just
10
Elliott.
Charlie kicked 10 in the next.
Charlie
3
would
weeks.
have to, I think, for Charlie to get that spot and security, he'd have to go. He'd have to kick probably 15 in the 3 weeks.
15.
Yeah.
Grind gets a lot of love from the...
He does.
And Grind gets absolutely. And he should get some love. He's had a fantastic year.
Johnno, retirement month continues, and you want to speak about the future of Jack Riewoldt.
Yeah, look, I think it's more just the exit of these champions that are, and some make the decision themselves, some get tapped on the shoulder. But I think the exit is absolutely critical for these guys and where they look to their future. And Gerard, the part of me that I wrestle with all the time, and I wrestled with it with Buddy, was if these guys are playing the way that they are, Jack Riewoldt at the moment, let's use him as the example. And he wants to go on for one more year, and the club say, "Yep, that's okay," because he just loves the game and he wants to be and loves the club, and everyone thinks he's got one more in him. But a few weeks in, he's playing in the twos, but he's actually happy with playing in the twos, and there's nothing wrong with that. Should we be jumping on him for going that one extra year? And I think that's what players wrestle with a little bit as well. Because
if he's 2 weeks in and he's in the twos, I'd say don't bother. If he's 15 weeks in and he needs a spell, or he's 10 weeks in,
2 weeks is probably a bit short. I agree with that.
I'd say no, time is up.
But that's more the essence of what I'm trying to sort of, I suppose, put across.
Ben Cunnington's a good example of this.
Yeah.
Right. So it would have been, North fans, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 or 6 weeks in, he's in the twos.
Yeah.
And he's spoken about, well, once I went back, I really struggled for the motivation to have the why about why I'm continuing. So I think to Gerard's point.
But if the player doesn't have the why and is just there loving it, still enjoying his time at the club, and a player like Jack who has won his flag, so he's not there trying to win the next flag for himself as an individual. So he's still a good presence around the group.
Easy to say, though, like now and say, yeah, I'd be okay with it. But this is a guy who plays in front of 60,000 minimum every week. He's played 3 grand finals on the biggest stage, kicked big goals in big games, and all of a sudden he's running around in the middle of winter at Werribee getting 4 touches.
But he mightn't be as well.
Yeah,
he mightn't be as well. He might play 5 for the year.
Johnno, if Jack Riewoldt came to you and said, I've got some really good options off the field next year, what do you reckon? What do you think I should do next season? What would you say?
Well, I'd ask him where he thought his love for the game was at. And I'm passionate on that. And if he goes, look,
but if he's asking you, he's clearly got a doubt.
Well, if he's clearly got the doubt, then that's the answer. The answer is you go off and you fulfil your commitments that you think will see you in the footy world for the next 15 years of your life, Jack.
I reckon clubs have become a bit generous, and then I think it's changed somewhat where they have been more prone to give the player the extra year. We used to be more cutthroat, and I think in some instances, clubs, let's not leave it to Jack Riewoldt. You're the club. You're the list management group at the club. Do what is best for the club. If you think you need to move past him, say we've got to go, and he'll cop it. I mean, he's had a pretty good. Even this year was probably an extra year that he thought he wasn't going to get.
Was there a point when they were going to move past Taylor Walker at one point there because of the way his body was, or was that not right?
But and there would be the odd example of that. You're right.
Yeah,
I probably thought Travis Boak was done 5 years ago.
Good point. And then he got going again, didn't he?
Burgoyne, I was like, how can this guy keep going? And he just kept going and kept going. So there is the example.
I think Michael Tuck was retired by various people in the media about 7 years in a row, and he kept on finding a way.
Yeah. But there's some others where I'm looking at them running around on the weekend going, gee, can someone just take it out of their hands and let them know that it's time, and that takes a strong club to do that. You want to speak about your old team, the Dogs?
Well, the Dogs, it becomes an interesting play this week, I think, for the Dogs from a mindset point of view, Gerard, because you've got a team that has just beaten the number 1 ranked team in the competition quite easily in Hawthorn over Collingwood. And now, for me, I suppose it goes to both sides. It goes to Hawthorn and the Bulldogs. One, maybe sort of trying to work through what they're going to get from Hawthorn this week, but more Hawthorn in the fact that they set that one up last week, which you mentioned earlier, and built that one up to be a grand final for themselves, which I understand, and the experience of playing Collingwood on the MCG, 70,000 people and all those things that go with it. But for Hawthorn, is there going to be a downturn in emotion for what they produced themselves and the height they got to now going down, playing the Dogs in Tassie, and the aspect around that side of things? So for me,
there could be, Johnno, but the main issue with this game, and this is taking nothing away from Hawthorn, who were fantastic last week, and Mitchell's going really well.
Awesome.
But the main issue is the Dogs have got to keep their momentum going. Last week's Dogs was the sort of form that can take them into a serious run to finals. But if they drop it against the side that's 16th on the ladder, despite the fact that they were excellent last week, well, then their credibility as a finals campaign, as a finals team, just flies out the window. And all the positives that they built up last week, with a couple of blokes coming back into defence, really playing well. Liam Jones, Ed Richards comes flying through. Bailey Dale's starting to get that run. It's the best I've seen them move the ball since about round 5 or 6 at the start of this season, Johnno. So we've seen this story before, as I said at the top. If the Dogs are going to make a charge, they've hit the starting line. They've got to make sure they continue on.
And that's been the point over the season so far, is that they've got to a point of excitement, and then they drop the Gold Coast game in Darwin, and those things start to affect the way that everyone judges the Bulldogs. So that's why it becomes huge. The next 2 weeks for the Bulldogs can shore up a final spot. It's massive.
One of the important players for them is young O'Donnell. He's looked out of place at various stages, but last week, for the first time, under pressure, he looked quite comfortable. Made some good decisions.
Yep. They'll do that and they'll win the next 2 comfortably. I'm still not sure what we'll learn, because their last 4 wins have been against 17th, 15th, 12th, 13th. They play Hawthorn and West Coast in their next 2. So they'll win and win comfortably, but leading into the finals, what do we know about them?
No, well, they played Geelong in the last round, so that probably answers a little bit of that.
Good
Kane?
test, isn't it?
Definitely, because that could shore up a home final or not, potentially. So that becomes
It could also shore up a final spot for Geelong.
Well, it could as well, so it's going to be massive.
The Saints, let's move on to them. Can't afford any more slip-ups, John.
No, they can't. And you sort of think and you go, okay, the Saints put so much work into the early part of the year to get the wins onto the board. They achieved so much in that part that, as a supporter now, if I was a Saints supporter watching this team, I'd be so disappointed if they let this slip now and don't play finals, because to do all the hard yards early on and then not to capitalise on that now, I think's a real disappointment for the Saints, because of what they achieved and how well they were going in the first half of the home and away season. So they play Richmond, which they just have to win. Then they play the Cats, which will be tough, but still achievable. And then they play the Brisbane Lions, which it gets tougher again. So the curve goes up in toughness over the next 3 weeks for the Saints. And they've got to clean up 2 of them to give themselves maybe a percentage chance to play finals. I think it's tough. The Cats and Brisbane, on paper, it looks really tough. But in saying that, if they get their defensive structures right, they proved on the weekend that they can do it for a half. They just need to get it going for 3.5 quarters, and they might secure a sneaky win.
You worried about Brisbane? Everybody's just turning it into scrap, making it a stoppage game.
A little bit, but I think Brisbane have got the class to really dig their way through this, and where they go in finals, it's a home final in some ways. They need that top 2 spot, and it's going to be tough to grab.
If the team's outside the 8, Johnno, Geelong, Sydney, and Adelaide, which one of those 3 would you least want to play in an elimination final? Geelong, Sydney, or Adelaide?
Probably Geelong if Hawkins and Blitzarves are back.
Yeah,
they're probably the most. Probably goes Geelong, Sydney, then Adelaide in order. Yep. Swans are playing good footy at the moment, and if they make it, they're a real sneaky chance as well to cause an upset in round 1 of the final series.